Welcome to On Texas Football. I'm Bobby Burton, your host, joined by CJ Vogel. Day after, it is now time for our rapid reactions defense. CJ, and our defensive wrap up or discussion about what we saw yesterday. I felt like when you have a score fest like what we saw yesterday, there's not going to be many what I would call quote unquote defensive highlights. Both defenses or all the defensive players got picked apart quite a bit. But let's talk about some high points and maybe some low points and really evaluate what we think we saw. And I do want to say this, you can't read too much into it because sometimes you don't know what the defense was called. You don't know if Sark already, there's just a number of different things. There is a zero-sum game situation going here. So maybe this was just what happened today, or it happened on Saturday. But my point being, there were some highlights, and I think we need to start with the defensive line. And I think one of them was Colton Vasek, young man out of Austin Westlake, has been hampered by injury since the day he got on campus. Mm-hmm. CJ, you told me that you had seen him multiple times in high school. You really thought he was very active and could be a guy that plays for Texas. Well, it looks like he's finally healthy. And for what we saw yesterday, he absolutely is a potential piece of this defense. And frankly, Jamon Tapp, Billy Walton leaving, it assuages your fears a little bit based on what we saw on Saturday.
Yeah, definitely. Colton's the guy I've been very high on, probably a little bit too high at times because we just haven't seen him piece it together at full health. Well, Saturday gave us an indication of what he could be when completely healthy. And I know he wasn't going up against the Kelvin Banks or Cam Williams, but the guy across from him is a Division I guy on scholarship as well. So for him to have that much success is a really good sign for me. Of course, I know that room is crowded when you talk about Ethan Burke, Barron Sorrell, Colin Simmons, Trey Moore. But again, it's going to be very difficult to keep a guy like Colton off the field because of what he's able to do when he's on it. 2 sacks and tackle for loss, all of which what felt like coming in a span of about 2 or 3 series. He was very reactive, very disruptive, and he was consistently behind the line of scrimmage on plays that mattered. So a really good sign, really good to see him out there participating at full strength because, again, a guy at Westlake that I'd seen a number of times, you saw the potential. You saw the ceiling at times. It was all about now at the next level, getting him to activate and get up to that level in which was very prevalent at the high school ranks.
Well, I tell you what, we also saw Ethan Burke's the one that batted the pass. So it's another Westlake guy. Batted the pass that Alfred Collins came down with for a touchdown. He was also in coverage a couple times that I thought made really good drops. Barron Sorrell played well. I thought Justice Finkley, not a name that you mentioned at the outset there at edge, actually was very, very active in all phases of the game. He's just a guy that I think, yes, he's undersized, but he's kind of just a guy that's a little bit of a baller, if that makes sense. And he's getting older now, more mature, understands things a little bit bigger and better, in that way, CJ. And so I think that he played a good game. Of course, Texas did stay without Trey Moore in this game on Saturday. But Colin Simmons showed a little bit of burst. Zena Umeozulu showed a little bit of burst. But Simmons probably pound for pound or whatever you want to call it. I was talking to Rod Babers post game. He's not only quick off the ball, he's got closing speed. He's got long arms. He plays through contact. Well, that freshman is going to end up being a really, really good football player down the line.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it was just a great, preview of what's to come for Colin Simmons. You got a little bit of a taste. He was credited with a sack there of Trey Owens in the spring game Saturday. You saw the little glimpses of what made him a 5-star and one of the most, I would say, highly talented or touted defensive end prospects Texas has ever had come to campus. It's been that long. It's been, I don't want to call it a drought, but you've certainly seen why he's been hyped up as much as he has. Colin Simmons, again, a guy that's going to be tough to keep off the field, Bobby, and it's going to find creative ways to get potentially 3 edge rushers on the field at a time, maybe with a creative stunt or twist or lining one up as an outside backer next to Anthony Hill somehow. But if you're able to deploy that type of package, not only are you still having enough beef up there to defend against the run, but you're able to really get out the quarterback and really create some pressure for opposing quarterbacks.
Well, I want to say this before we get to defensive tackles. I want to say thank you to our sponsor, Adam Lowy and the Lowy Law Firm. If you've been injured in a car wreck, truck wreck, motorcycle accident, or even an ATV, and you think you might be do some compensation because of someone else's negligence, give Adam and his team a call or reach out to him via the loweylawfirm.com. 20 plus years of experience, getting lots of awards for his service and what they do for their clients. So again, if you've been injured in a car wreck and think you might be due some compensation, reach out to Adam and his group, loweylawfirm.com. Thank you, Adam, for your sponsorship of On Texas Football. All right, defensive tackle, much maligned position heading into spring. Worried about Vernon Broughton. Congratulations to him. We can now say we believe that he was getting married on Saturday. That's why he wasn't there. But Alfred Collins only played a couple series. Got a pick six. That was a highlight, of course, for the defensive tackle group. But I saw some signs of hope in that group, and I'll say that Tia Savea looked pretty darn good on Saturday. Then you also had Sadir Mitchell, who I thought played well. Alex January had a tackle for loss. All of them, Aaron Bryant showed well at times. However, Steve Sarkisian still said in his post-game press conference on Saturday, we got to have more. We need more production from that group. What were your takeaways from the defensive tackle group?
Yeah, I was actually I don't want to be the bearer of bad news, Bobby, but I actually liked what I saw a little bit from that interior defensive line group. Of course, it didn't feel like there were gaping holes for the opposing running backs to run through. And for me, that's the biggest point of worry right now on this Texas defense. Knowing that you're losing Devondre Sweat, Terrell Carter, Byron Murphy, those guys were very big pieces in what made a very talented and stout run defense a year ago. It felt to me like you were expecting to see CJ Baxter, and those running backs break free up the middle. And it just wasn't necessarily the case today. To me, Tia Savea was tremendous. And we looked at him a little bit at Arizona, and we knew that he's a guy that he's not going to fill up the stat sheet, but he's going to clog the lanes, and he's going to have two guys on him at all times, not moving anywhere, just being able to ensure that lanes don't open up. He did a good job today. I actually liked a lot of what I saw from Sadir Mitchell. I didn't think he was out of position. I didn't think he looked slow. I actually thought he was disruptive at times. There's plenty to work on, especially in the passing game for him, getting upfield, getting after the quarterback. But the run game, to me, I thought he had a good day. You mentioned Alex January having that big tackle for loss. I know Texas is still portal hunting at the moment, but right now that's going to have to be a guy that contributes at some point in the fall because, like you said, Steve Sarkisian very bluntly said, we just don't have the bodies. It's a pure math number issue for the Longhorns right now because, you have your 5 or 6 guys, but beyond that, you're playing football 4 times in the month of September. It's going to be hot in Austin. And then you have hopefully 13, 14, or 15 games where that's a place where injuries add up. And if you lose a guy and that drop off is significant, it can completely alter the identity of your defense, one that you need to have in the SEC.
Yeah, thankfully, Texas had 2 portal transfers on campus, and they're expecting another one either later today or tomorrow, and that's Dominic Williams out of TCU. But they hosted Jay Toya at the game on Saturday, as well as Bill Norton, Toya out of UCLA, Norton out of Arizona. We've been talking about them on Texas Football and as well as on TexasFootball.com the last couple of days. All right, let's move to linebackers. CJ, Anthony Hill and David Benda get the start. That was expected. Second team, we talked about this. Leonga Lafau and Mo Blackwell were second team. Lafau backing up, I believe it was Lafau backing up Anthony Hill, and then the Blackwell backing up Benda. I found it interesting because that means that Lafau has moved ahead of, in my opinion, Kendrick Blackshear. Blackshear had a face mask penalty on the goal line, but that was a bang play. It's just interesting. Anthony Smith saw a lot of action late, and I thought he looked good. Darren Gillette made a stop on the goal line. Your takeaways yourself on the linebacker group. We didn't see a lot of flash plays, by the way, from Anthony Hill, which was a little surprising.
Yeah, it was. I'd agree with that. But to the point about the linebackers in general, again, going back to that interior defensive line group, running game, they weren't allowing big plays
Yeah.
out of that running group. I think that's a strength of that Texas linebacking group at the moment. They have a lot of speed, and as a result, it allows them to make up for wrong angles, wrong reads, wrong gaps because they're so quick. We didn't see a lot of David Benda today, and that was okay for me. This is a guy who's been around the block plenty. He understands spring football. He understands what he needs to improve on. He actually spoke about that a little bit in his availability afterwards. Looking forward to getting his linebacking group active and looking forward for the summer months with workouts and plans like that. But I liked what I saw from Leon Glafau, Mo Blackfelt, both of them playing right now in between 220 and 225. You can play at that height and weight in the SEC in the middle of the defense. If either of them were asked to play next to Anthony Hill or David Benda, I would feel comfortable at the moment. I would have liked to have seen a little bit more from Kendrick Blackshear. We know what he can do physically coming down the hill, but when he's kind of sitting back and being picked apart on in the passing game, that's when you start to wonder about his limitations on the field for the fall. But also, to your point, Bobby, I actually thought Ty Anthony Smith later in the scrimmage had some really impressive moments for a young cat. Once he gets his weight on, I think he's going to be a really, really impressive player.
Good stuff, CJ. All right, the defensive back. Let's talk about them because, frankly, I think that if there was, to your point, defensive tackle looked better than expected with Savea and January, even Sadir Mitchell looking good in spots. But the defensive back, when you have a score fest like we saw on Saturday, they're going to be the ones that get pointed at. And yes, Michael Taft was back, Derek Williams, Andrew Makuba, but no Jahdae Barron. So Jalen Gilbo was in there. Manny Muhammad almost got his hand on a pass to Jonte Cook, but other than a Kobe Black interception of a walk-on quarterback in Cole Lord, the defensive secondary did not look top shelf, in my opinion. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, the highlights are going to be few and far between with that group, and it's unfortunate because, again, it's kind of contradictory from what we've heard, or at least what I've heard this spring, with how much more active they were in the passing game. Of course, Manny Muhammad had been a star. I actually thought he played pretty well. He made a very, I would say, close contested play on the Jonte catch down the sideline. Didn't see him a whole lot. My thing about the secondary, Bobby, and I'm not too worried yet. I don't think you should be pressing the panic button. I know it's not the performance you were hoping to see after this spring, but Jahdae Barron didn't play. Andrew Makuba didn't play a whole lot. Manny Muhammad didn't play a whole lot. You weren't necessarily running out your top end guys that were then getting and allowing big plays. I know Terrence Brooks, it looked to me like it was a cover 3 look, and he bit with the in breaking route, just not necessarily having that camaraderie yet with his safety over the top. I'm not sure what that was. That's what it looked like to me. That can get cleaned up. And I thought aside from that, Terrence Brooks had a solid day. It wasn't great, obviously. But that group right now, I'm not entirely worried. Would you have liked to see more balls on the ground? Absolutely. That's the goal. But your best guys weren't on the field for the duration of those big plays.
Well, Arch Manning made it look easy against.
That's true.
That's the reality. And so when that happens, is it the quarterback picking you apart, or is it your play, or is it a combo of both? Right. Mm-hmm. And I know that we did not see safeties really getting after it a little bit in coverage, but Xavier Filsaime got vandalized twice or victimized twice. Right. One by Thatcher Milton, another one from Ryan Wingo over the top. We look at it, and right now, I think that if you want to take away some positives, I did think Andrew Makuba looked good in spots. I also thought Gavin Holmes looked more physical. Mm-hmm. And he is a key piece to this because he's the number one backup corner right now. And they're going to need him because Kobe Black doesn't necessarily look ready. Wardell Mack doesn't necessarily look ready. And Warren Roberson, you know what? He's an iffy right now for me too. And so I think Gavin Holmes may become a little bit of a linchpin in some ways for that secondary. They're going to need him to step up to be a solid defense, and a defense with depth, not just with talent, but with depth. As far as the safeties are concerned, they did not play Michael Taft a bunch in the second half. He just didn't play much. I think they know what they got there, and we're wanting to get Jelani McDonald more action. McDonald did okay in pass defense. Run support, he got juked a little bit by the walk-on Kai Woods, who had a nice game. But hey, that's what happens. I mean, a good player is going to make good plays against you at times. But all in all, I'm a little concerned about the secondary without Jahdae Barron, because I do think that Jahdae gives them a little bit more experience back there, a little bit more communication and understanding of what's going on and what they need to do to win. And so that's going to be a big piece for me, is watching that transpire over a period of time. All right. We're going to wrap up with rapid reactions here in a second.
One last thing real quick, Bobby, on the safeties. I know we've talked about keeping eyes on the ball and making plays on the football. At times, I thought they got a little too locked. We saw Michael Taff allowed Jaden Blue to just cut right in front of him on a catch. The same thing happened again with the Milton touchdown from Trey Owens to Jelani McDonald. Both of them were ready to catch the football rather than play the man in front of them. It allowed for big plays when they were out of position and not necessarily looking to make a tackle at the point. We've talked about creating turnovers, but that's the risk you run when you get dead set on the ball, or essentially waiting for it to come to you if you're not the first man in line there. So that's an issue for me. The other thing, when I was down on the field before we walked into the press conference, I've known Andrew Makuba since he was a sophomore in high school. It still surprises me a little bit to see a little bit of a loose jersey on that number 13, only 186 pounds. It took me by surprise just a little bit. Hell of a football player, but that's certainly something I'll be looking forward to seeing if he makes any adjustments to his physical frame before the football season kicks off this fall.
You talk about adding good weight, I take it.
Yes.
Got it. All right. I want to say thanks to Adam Lowy, but before we get final thoughts on the defense, you're listening to Rapid Reactions on Texas football, the defensive side of the ball. We're talking a little bit this morning. CJ, thank you, by the way, for getting up early to get this out. Thank you also to Adam Lowy, our sponsor. Adam and the Lowy Law Firm have been helping injured Texans for 20 plus years. If you think you're due some compensation due to someone else's negligence in a car wreck, truck wreck, automobile accident, or an ATV motorcycle accident, anything whatsoever, give Adam and his team a call at loweylawfirm.com. All right, major takeaways. We started with Colton Vasek. I think that's fair. I think Colin Simmons is as advertised. My major takeaway is the defensive secondary looks still a little discombobulated. I'm not, and I'm not here. And my other takeaway is this: I don't think we can sit here and say they fixed the interior of the defensive line either. I think that with Jake Majors out and rotating all that they did on the offensive line on Saturday, I'm worried about communication and output in the secondary, and I'm worried about up front. What are your takeaways?
I think your edge rotation is going to be the strength. I think that's going to be the key point in your defense, creating negative plays or keeping opposing defenses or offenses from scoring the ball. Again, your rotation that you expect to see showed up. It was Ethan Burke with the pass deflection on the first drive for the interception, the pick six. Colton Vasek had 2 sacks, a tackle for loss. Colin Simmons had a sack. We didn't see Trey Moore. It'll be interesting again, because that's a guy that I've been told time and time again when Texas scrimmages, this guy's in the backfield before the ball gets to the quarterback. So if you can add him to a group that's already proven to be pretty disruptive with the group that we just mentioned, now you're looking at a group of guys that can really, really elevate the entire level of your defense.
All right, before we let you go, we want to ask y'all to please become an OTF OG. That's our premium subscription to On Texas Football. We started just a couple of weeks ago. Already almost 1,000 people have signed up. We really appreciate you guys. If you use the code OTFOG, and this is for On Texas Football viewers and listeners, OTFOG, you can get $20 off your annual subscription. Instead of $59.95, it's just $39.95. Go to On Texas Football and sign up for the annual subscription, and you get $20 off, when you use the code and apply it, OTFOG. CJ, and Jerry have a bunch of recruiting updates from yesterday. There's just a lot of news going on right now around the Longhorn faithful, portals coming and going, by the way. We expect some movement today, potentially, on some guys. in the portal. So please come on over. It'll be first on ontexasfootball.com for just $39.95 a year. That's really a nominal fee compared to a lot of other folks out there. All right, CJ, thanks so much for getting up early again. Appreciate you, bud. You have a good weekend. And guys, that'll be it. That'll do it for Rapid Reactions, the defensive version. CJ, all in all, a really strong spring game performance. The talent on display, both offense, really saw it on offense, but I see talent on defense too as well. Yeah. All right, CJ, thanks for your time, bud. Thanks also to Adam Lowy. For CJ Vogel, I'm Bobby Burton. Hook 'em, guys.